This is Tyler Lewis here on today's show. We're honored to have a Hall of Fame coach and, in my opinion, the greatest high school coach of all time. Thanks for being on here today, Coach.
Great to be with you, Tyler.
Coach Smith, 9-time national champion, won Coach of the Year 4 times. One word that describes you is just a winner, and you've done it the right way throughout your career with your honor, your integrity, and character. And that just speaks a lot of you, not only as a coach, but as a person. So when you took the job at Oak Hill, did you think you were going to have the success that you're having today?
Well, I was hopeful that we would, but uh, you know, not knowing what the future holds. Of course, I came in the early '80s, and basketball was a little different back then, and the landscape was different, and uh, didn't sure what level we could get the program to, but I didn't know how long I would be at Oak Hill. So, but I wanted to do the best job I could do from day one. I came as an assistant in 1983 and took over as the head coach in 1985, and we had a pretty good foundation when I took over. We had a good team, and I added 4 or 5 Division I players to that mix, and one of them was a McDonald's All-American. His name was Chris Brooks from New York City. Went to Gompers High School. He came to Oak Hill, and he's actually the second McDonald's All-American. We had one back in 1980, Glenn Mayer, but the teams weren't as good back then. They had a few good players, but not really great teams. And Chris led us to a 25-1 season, and that kind of got the ball rolling in the right direction. And we've just built on that every year since then.
At the beginning of your head coaching career at Oak Hill, how were you able to convince athletes to come to Malta Wilson?
Yeah, back in the 80s, you probably don't remember this, but they had Prop 48 where kids had to have a grade average of, you didn't have the core classes like you had now. You just had to take classes, have a certain grade point average, take the SAT. Is up to the school, to admit you or not. And there were a lot of academic casualties back in those days. And most of the players I got back then were coming to make sure they'd be eligible to play as freshmen. So, we were a place where kids would come to get their grades. We always told them it's basketball and books here, and they would come and get their grades and go on to college and play right away. And if they were fearful that they weren't going to qualify to public school, and we got a lot of kids back then from metropolitan areas. Most of our players were from Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, all up and down the East Coast. And that's all changed, obviously, through the years. But we just convinced them, mainly by talking to their families back then. AAU wasn't that big of a deal back then. They did have an AAU program, but it wasn't what it is today, where these kids are going all over the country and playing all these games in the summer and in the springtime. It was mainly that you talk to the parents and the players and, sell them on Oak Hill as a school academically first, and then the basketball program. And we would get, and back then, really, if a kid was leaving a public school situation, especially from the East Coast, there weren't a lot of options. They would go to Oak Hill. We were the number one choice. There wasn't a lot of these schools, there wasn't a Montverde, and there wasn't a La Lemure and all these other places they could go to. And so kids would either stay home or they would go to Oak Hill. There wasn't a lot of competition as far as other private schools. And we attracted a lot of really good players early in my career just because the school was known as being a school that could get them qualified and get them to college where they're eligible to play right away. And then we played a great basketball schedule, obviously.
I mean, with all the talent that you've had on your teams throughout the years, how have you let your players play, and how did you get each player to buy into the team setting?
Yeah, I mean, it starts from the first. You might even remember. It starts from the first initial meeting, first time we're together. We try to emphasize that we're a family atmosphere here. That nobody's more important than our basketball program. And that's never changed and never will change, obviously, at a place like Oak Hill, including me. I'm no more important than any of the players. We're all part of that big family that is the Oak Hill basketball program. And, you get everybody to buy in. The chemistry, everybody always tells me, how do you get the chemistry to work? Because they are superstars where they come from. Even if they're a low D1 player, they're probably the best player on their team and maybe the best player in their area. And they all have to give up something when they come here. They're not going to average. I took an average of the team like 3 years ago in the first team meeting. I said, we're not going to average 187 points a game. That's what they all averaged when you added it up. And I said, that's not going to happen. So obviously we all have to buy into what we're going to do here to be successful. And some of us are going to score, some of us are not. Some of us are not going to, obviously we're not going to average, any of us, what we average back home. So you got to give them to buy into that. But I think the time we spend together as a group on campus from day one, going to school together, living in the dorm together, go to church on Sundays together. We do activities together off campus. Everything's done as a team. And so when you get to the gym for practice, everybody's pretty friendly. I mean, on occasion, you may have a guy or two that stands out, or, we try to get them to all hang together as one big group and not have 2 or 3 fractions. And of course, you're going to have guys that you're closer with. Each player is going to be closer with some players than others, but we try to get them to all get along on and off the court. Makes my job easier when you start playing games and try to coach them. And but it's a very important thing, because just being on campus at Oak Hill, living together 24/7, I think it helps with team chemistry as much as what goes on in practice.
No, it was definitely special, especially living with all the guys in the dorm and just being able to spend basically your whole life up there with them, and you guys day in, day out, kind of makes that whole situation just really special. What makes Oak Hill so special to you?
I think it's the people that are, that work at Oak Hill, the coaching staff. I've got a great staff. I've had guys who've been with me for a long time. It's been here. Brian Marr's been here. This is his 19th year. Taylor's been here. Taylor Kahn's been here for 12 years. Corey Alexander's on my staff. Dion Dacon's is assistant now. Corey played here. Dion played here. So I've got former players that work with me. I've got assistant coaches that have been with me for a while. The staff at Oak Hill, administration is behind the basketball program. It's something that's very important to our school. And of course, the players as people too are vitally important. I just think it's the people on our campus that make this a special place. And of course, we're a little isolated. Some people always go, how do you get it done in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia? But I think it's just the people, and you enjoy what you do, and it makes for an easy atmosphere to work in, and easy atmosphere for kids to go to school and play basketball in.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. A special culture up there, and obviously all the people are friendly, and like you said, they want to see the basketball team succeed. So it makes it really special. How would you describe like your coaching style? Because I love playing with you. Like, you never lost your cool. You let all your players play the game like that they want to play. And how would you describe the way you coach?
Yeah, I don't know. Some people say I'm laid back. Some people say the opposite. But I always tell coaches when I go to clinics and when I talk to young coaches, just be yourself, and don't try to be somebody else. Obviously, you may look up to some coaches. You may have learned things from some coaches. That's fine. But I always tell people, you have a personality, and you want to coach to your personality. And, there's yellers and screamers. There's guys that pat guys on the back. There's different ways to handle. I try to handle players individually. Hopefully I get to know them by living on campus and being around them so much, knowing what buttons to push with each player. And that's not showing special treatment to me. That's being a good coach, knowing how to motivate each player. Every player is not motivated the same way. You were my point guard that year in 2012, and we had a great relationship. And I try to have a special relationship with all my point guards, because they're the guys you're talking to a lot during the game, and they've got to relay what you want to do. And they've got to know you as a coach and your personality, and you got to know your point guard so he can relay what you want done on the floor. So he almost knows what you're thinking. And I had that relationship with you, and I've had that with almost all my point guards. And I try to develop that. You were kind of quiet. You were hard to get to know at first, but once I got to know you and coach you, it was a great experience. And I just feel like, getting to know your players and dealing with your players that way makes your team successful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you mean the world to me, Coach, and you definitely made a major impact in my life. So
Appreciate that.
when you're kind of getting recruiting players up to Oak Hill, or trying to get players up to Oak Hill, I know you mentioned getting to know your point guards. Is that the main position you want first, or are you just going after the best player, or what are you going after?
No, I look for a point guard first. I try to build because it's different at Oak Hill. We have a different team every year. It's a different set of guys. Some years you may have, like last year, I lost 8 players. I had 8 seniors. They all went Division I. So this year is a whole new team. Well, I've got only 3 seniors on this team. So next year we'll be returning hopefully 9 guys. So be a little different next year. But it's just you never know from year to year. But I always try to get a point guard, build my team around that player. Sometimes you get the point guard later, so you can't do that. But it's just we'd like to get it. This year we had a point guard, Dior Johnson. He was like the first guy to tell us he was coming, and then 3 or 4 came right after him because they wanted to play with him. Well, he's not here now, and so things are a little different than they were 4 or 5 months ago when we thought this is the team we're going to have. So we've had to adjust a little bit, but we'd like to find a point guard, build our team around them. We've got some young point guards this year. Caleb Foster, who's a sophomore, Xavier Brown, who's a junior. So we've got some young point guards in our program, which I like, that'll be here a couple of years, and we can build around those guys. And obviously we're going to take really good players. It's not like we have to have a point guard first, but I like to build the program that way for each year. But if there's a high school All-American wants to come, we're not going to say, oh, we're not taking you because you're not a point guard. Obviously, we're going to take the best players we can take that we think will fit in at Oak Hill. Will be the right players for our program and the way that we play, and we just go from there.
That's awesome. Going into this season, how do you feel like this year's team's gonna be, and how do you think how do you feel about like COVID changing your schedule pretty much every night?
Yeah, it's a strange year, but I like the team. Really like the group that we have. They're very coachable. We have a lot of depth. MJ Rice, probably our best player. He's about a 6'5", 225-pound, I guess you could say wing player, but he could play about any position. We played him some at the point in practices. We'll probably play him some at the point during games, but he could play 1, 2, 3, 4 if you wanted him to, and you can post him up as well. And so he probably will be our best player, our leading scorer this year. He's coming off an ACL surgery. He got cleared just last Friday, and he's excited. He's been practicing, but hasn't played in any scrimmages or anything, but he's going to play this weekend as long as our games happen. Speaking about COVID, man, I mean, you never know the day of the game if you're going to play the game. We've had a couple scrimmages. One we got to play it. The other one we didn't. We had a game Tuesday we thought we were going to play, and the whole team was negative. They tested, and then the bus driver was positive, so we didn't play that game. And we're hopeful to play tomorrow night and Saturday. We're pretty strict at Oak Hill. Our students have been on campus since August 23rd and haven't left, so we've got a bubble here. So we don't want to bring a team on campus, where we might spread the virus if they've got somebody that's positive. So they have to test 5 days prior to coming to Oak Hill. They all have to be negative. They got to wear masks on the bench. It's pretty strict, our guidelines. And, if anything is out of whack, then we're not going to play the game. And our season is going to be a little different this year. We hope to play 8 to 10 games between now and Thanksgiving break. Our semester will be over Thanksgiving. Our kids are going home, and we don't play any games in December. So then come January, February, and March, we hope to get in about 15 to 18 games. We're in a league. It came out yesterday. We're in a high school league with a lot of the top Nike teams, Montverde, La Lemure, Sunrise Christian, Legacy Charter, obviously us. There's 8 of us in there, and we're going to play each other twice. So we're going to get about 14 games against each other. We're going to play at events that we've already been scheduled to go to anyway, like the Hall of Fame in Springfield, Mass., the Hall of Fame West in Phoenix, two weekend trips to DC, which we can bus to. And we're going to try to bus as much as we can instead of fly. Obviously, you can't fly to bus to Phoenix, Arizona, but we're just trying to keep the guys safe and not have anybody come down with the virus. Well, we bring them back to campus and it spreads on our small campus. So we're doing everything we can to have a season and also to be safe with our players.
Do you think the new Nike league per se, you think that will last for a long time? You think that'll just be a 1 year thing because of COVID, or you think it's really gonna take off and be a
Yeah,
thing figured out?
it started with COVID because we wanted to make sure we had a season and we wanted to make sure the type players we had got to play against really good players as well. We wanted to have not just have a season, but we want to have good games and good competition because the best players want to play against the best. And as coaches, we want to coach against the best coaches. So in order to do that, we've started this league, and it's definitely going to be, I think it'll be bigger and better next year and in the years to come. I think it's going to be something that grows. It might be something that rivals, like the EYBL does with the AU teams. I don't think we're going to have 40 teams, but I think we're going to have all of the top Nike teams are going to want to be involved in this. Of course, with games being streamed now and then games being shown on TV, it could be a very good thing for all the schools and those players, and should be something I think that a lot of the best players in the country are going to want to play in a league like this where they know they're going to go against the best players and get challenged most every night out. And I think it's going to be a great thing for high school basketball.
It definitely will, because I mean, obviously you're one of the best coaches ever, and being a player for you, you definitely want to play against the best competition day in, day out. Yeah. So I think that league is going to be really special for you guys and for every other team, and get a lot more. I mean, playing against the best, so it's not too many blowouts anymore for you guys.
Right.
So
it'll be great games.
It'll be really good games. So throughout your head coaching career, how has the game kind of changed? Because I mean, I feel like it's changed even 8 years ago when I was at Oak Hill. So how has it changed in that from the playing side of thing and the coaching side?
Yeah, I playing side. I know when I started coaching back in the '80s at Oak Hill, I mean, we would run. I probably overcoached, to be honest. I mean, we were running sets every time down. I was up coaching. Not that I'm not up coaching now, but it's a little different. I think the way the game is played now, you give your players more freedom. The floor is spread more. I mean, there's a lot. NBA is basically pick and roll, and it's getting that way in college and high school now, where the floor is spread out. You're letting players make plays, and we run a lot of dribble drive offense. We run some 5-out offense, 4-out. I didn't do any of that back in the '80s. We ran the UCLA high post shuffle cut. We ran some flex, and you tell a kid now you're going to run the flex, he's going to transfer. So times have changed with style of play, and teams want to play fast. And of course, I tell my teams, if you want to play fast, you better play defense and rebound. It's not about running down the floor and shooting the ball quickly. It's about guarding and rebounding, and then you'll get more possessions and get more shots up. So, but you do give players more freedom than you used to, and things have changed as far as the player. They all have trainers and mentors and parents. Everybody else is involved. I wouldn't call it an entourage, but it seems like every player with any ability at all has quite a few people around them. And back then it was, it was just your parents and the player. And I kind of like some things about the way things are now, because back in the '80s and '90s, college coaches would call me. I would be on the phone till midnight every night, 7 days a week. They recruited me as hard as they recruited the kid. And I very seldom take recruiting calls anymore, because they're calling, they're not calling me. They're calling the AU coach. They're calling the trainer. They're calling the parents. They're calling the player. Whoever's involved, whoever has the influence on the player. And back in those days, I was the person that had the influence on the player. And but I've never, even in 35, 38 years, I've never told a player where to go to school, because I don't want them calling me in 2 years asking me, why'd you tell me to go there, coach? I want to transfer. So, you went to NC State and transferred. It wasn't because of me. I know that.
Yeah, it wasn't because of you, coach. I know that. So, you kind of touched on it a little bit before, but kind of like getting into today's game with the entourage, the ego of players, and the expectations of parents. I mean, I feel like you're one of the best to deal with that kind of stuff. Like, how do you kind of deal with these egos and parents who are, think their kid's the best.
Right. Yep. A part of it, I think, that helps me is that I'm at Oak Hill, and the player usually knows. He's in practice every day. He knows if somebody's kicking his rear end, or if somebody's a better player than he is, or somebody's been playing better, or if somebody's earned the minutes. So that helps too. I don't have that many players griping, complaining about minutes, and there's other good players, obviously, on our team. We've got most years, without exception, the last 4 or 5 years, every player on the team, maybe one player a year, is not a Division I player. So you're playing with 10, 11 other Division I players. Everybody can play, and they've got to share minutes, and nobody's going to play 32 minutes like they would at a public high school back home. So they know that coming in. I try to tell them that ahead of time, and I try to lay down the groundwork with the parents, whoever comes. When they come visit now, it's not just parents. They'll usually have a coach with them, a trainer, parents, siblings. It's a bunch of people in my office. Sometimes I don't have enough chairs in my office, but and you've got to, try to explain to them how it could be. And I usually paint the worst picture. Here's what could happen, and if that's going to happen, do you want to be at Oak Hill? Because it's not for everybody, and it's not going to be easy. And there's going to be other good players, and you're here to compete. But I also try to compare it to college, where they're going to go to college, and if you've got 13 scholarship players, that's 13 Division I players on the team. You're going to have to compete in college. So if you come here for a year or 2 or 3, whatever it is, that kind of puts you ahead of things when you get to college. So I just try to lay out everything before they get here, and kind of makes it easier for me once the season starts. And I'm sure I'll get a call or two this year like I do every year, but I don't get bombarded like some coaches and end up retiring or quitting or taking another job because they can't handle the parents. That's a good thing about being at Oak Hill. I mean, we've got a lot of good players, but I've had really good parents too, and supportive parents. And you're going to have a few on occasion, obviously, that maybe don't see eye to eye with you and what you're doing with their son, but it's very, very few.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, like I said, you're one of the best to deal with that kind of stuff. How's it going to be this year? Turner Gymnasium having 0 fans. How is it going to be a little different?
Yeah, it's going to be really different. We had a scrimmage the other night. We did let some students come that were, of course, our students, like I said, have been on campus for almost 3 months, and we have no positive cases. So they can come, but we're a small school this year. We only have maybe 95 students to 100. So even if the students all come, there's not many people in there, and we don't even have all the bleachers down. We've got like 4 sets of bleachers down. The gym only holds like 350 people, but there might be 50 people in there at games, and but we're kind of getting used to it. We had that scrimmage, and we're going to have some games this weekend. I think it's just what it is, and it's going to be that way. And it's probably going to be that. We said through the first semester, but realistically, to be honest, I don't know if we'll have fans all year round, till the season's over. So we're live streaming every game. So and our parents aren't even allowed to come to games right now. So that's hard on them, but we're live streaming every game, on our school website, and trying to get exposure for all of our players that way. We do have an ESPN2 TV game coming up on November 12th with Lake Norman Charter. So guys will get to play a TV game. We've got some other games that'll be televised in January. And so the players, our players are still going to get exposure. They're still going to, people are going to follow them. The scouting service, the recruiting people, the colleges, they're going to watch our games. And I don't think our kids are going to get slighted, but I think some kids will. But just going to be a weird, different season, and hopefully it'll be over this season, not continue into next season. I'm worried about next season still. So it's just going to be a little different this year, obviously. And Turner Gym being built in 1954, we're excited to have a TV game from Turner Gym. I never thought that would happen. That ESPN would come to our little campus in Mouthville, West Virginia, and televise a game, but they are going to do that. And so we're excited for that game. And but our season in as a whole is going to be quite different than normal.
Yeah, it definitely is. COVID's definitely change the culture of sports right now, but definitely understand all the precautions that y'all are taking. Obviously, looking around, sort of like your man cave right there, a lot of jerseys in
Yeah.
there too. And I mean, obviously, you coach tons of talent at Oak Hill. If you had to pick your 5 players to your starting 5 out of the whole time you've been coaching there, who would they be and why?
I knew you were going to ask that question. Everybody asks that question. I usually dodge it, but I'm not going to dodge it with you as much. I always try to, when people ask for that, I say, I'm not going to maybe give you the list you want to hear. I'm going to give you the list that I think were when those players were at Oak Hill at that time. We've had 30 some guys go on and play in the NBA, so I will be slighting a lot of players, but the guys that have played at Oak Hill, everybody knows Carmelo Anthony and Kevin Durant. Those guys stand out, and they went on to have great years. They both left after their freshman year in college, but they had tremendous freshman years. KD set all kinds of records in the Big 12, and Carmelo won the national championship, and they were lottery picks, and they've been great pro players. So I would put those 2 on there. When they were here, I thought Jerry Stackhouse would have to be on that list. Back in the early 90s, he was a man playing with boys at that time, and he was a McDonald's All-American. He was a Nike National High School Player of the Year, and of course, he went to Carolina and had a great career. But as a high school player, he was a tremendous player. Ron Mercer, most people would not put him on the list, but he won the Naismith Award at Oak Hill. One of only 2 players to do that, Brandon Jennings being the other one. So he was considered the #1 high school player in the country. Played on Monday night at Kentucky in 2 national championship games. And then he had some knee problems in the NBA. But Ron was a great high school player at Oak Hill. And also, I think if I had to pick a guard, because it's hard, I've had so many great point guards, you being one of them too, but I would have to go with Rod Strickland. And a lot of people don't even remember him because he was one of the first really good players at Oak Hill. He graduated. I was an assistant the first year when he was here. He graduated in 84, 85. And I still have a great relationship. He was here 2 weeks ago visiting campus, and we allowed him to come to campus as one of the few visitors been on our campus this fall because he's an alum. But Rod played 17 years in the NBA, played at DePaul, and he's one of the few guards I ever saw in high school that could get wherever he wanted to with the ball at any time. He and I told a story when he was here. I said, I don't know if you remember this, but we were playing Flint Hill. They were ranked 2nd in the country. We weren't ranked anywhere. That was one of the first good teams at Oak Hill, but we weren't a nationally ranked team. And we were tied with them with 2 minutes to go. And basically told him just to take over the game and against a really good team, obviously. And he scored 10 straight points, and he's a point guard, but he could get to the rim at will and get in the lane and make plays. And we ended up winning the game by 10, and they never scored again. And he won the game for us. It was an upset, and it was a big win for our program at the time. And he basically did it by himself. And he was almost unguardable in high school. I mean, so good with the ball, and his knock was that he wasn't a great shooter, but he developed into a pretty good shooter. And he played 17 years in the NBA, so it's hard not to have him on there. As I mentioned before, Brandon, those are 5 guys there. Brandon was our other Naismith winner, Brandon Jennings, and he was a great high school player. He set all the scoring records at Oak Hill when he was here, and as well as being a guy that distributed and ran the team. His junior year, he only averaged 15 points a game, and he played with Nolan Smith, and we were #1 in the country. His senior year, we lost all of his teammates from the year before. We had 2 sophomores and 2 juniors starting with him, and he had to score, and he averaged 35 a game. Now, we weren't quite as good with him scoring 35, but if he didn't score 35, we were going to be a very mediocre Oak Hill team, and he led us to a record. I think we were 35-4 that year, with not a strong team, with a lot of young players. And so he would be close to being on that list. And there's others, but it's hard, with Carmelo and Stack and KD and Ron Mercer. Rod Strickland. A couple of those guys probably aren't the guys you thought I'd put on there, but I always try to base it on what they did at Oak Hill when you ask that question. And so there's my list.
I love it.
It may
That's a good
change
5 right
tomorrow.
there. That's going to be a hard 5 to beat from any
Yeah,
sport. If you put 5
it's a
more
good
people
group.
in Oak Hill, that's going to be a hard 5 to beat for sure. So,
Yeah.
well, I appreciate you, Coach, for coming on the show, and thank you so much. Obviously, you mean the world to me, and I think you're the greatest coach of all time. So I appreciate you coming on here.
Well, thanks, Tyler. I love you.
I love you too, Coach.